Well, I think 2024 is going to be an amazing year for tech innovation.
Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Season 3 of Travel Trends. This is your host, Dan Christian. I'm so excited to be back with you to share what will be our biggest and best season yet of Travel Trends. In Season 3, we take on a number of new topics and initiatives. We actually have a series of panel sessions lined up where we're going to talk about sustainability, technology, and we have an incredibly inspiring women's panel that will launch next week. We've got a number of regional travel trends as well to highlight the activity that's occurring in the US market, the Canadian market, Australian market, UK market, which couldn't be more important, especially going into an election year for many of these countries. And we have a number of super significant and really exciting leading travel industry figures that we're interviewing, including one really special guest that we have today. Also, our AI Summit is now open for registration. February 21st and 22nd, early bird specials are now available. Go check out traveltrendspodcast.com, our AI Summit 2024, for more details. We've got several sponsors lined up for this podcast and for the AI Summit, which we're going to be sharing details on shortly, and we're super excited about that. One other amazing highlight going into this year is that the Travel Trends podcast has been selected as the official podcast partner for Forbes Travel Guide, and we will be at their summit in Las Vegas at the end of February. We'll have a booth on the floor. We'll be interviewing key guests and speakers as we did for a number of conferences last year, and we're super excited about that. We also have switched into 2024 with our World's Best Travel Markets initiative, worldsbestmarkets.com and World's Best Markets on Instagram, where you can inspire your travels for this year and make sure that you're incorporating markets into your travel plans. Now, moving into today's opening session of Season 3, we have an incredibly special guest, an industry legend. We have Paul English, an American tech entrepreneur, computer scientist, philanthropist, and probably known to most of you as the co-founder and CTO of Kayak, which was acquired for $1.8 billion by Priceline. Now, Paul was a successful entrepreneur even before Kayak. He had actually launched and sold 2 companies prior to founding Kayak with Steve Hafner. He also took some time off to take care of his dying father, which, as most of you know who know me or have listened to this podcast, is deeply meaningful and was part of the start of this podcast. And so I wanted to acknowledge him and to those of you going into this new year who've lost a loved one. Now, the inspiring part of Paul's story, of course, is that when he decided to get back into business, he went to General Catalyst, and his former boss, Larry Bond, introduced him to Steve Hafner. And this would begin what would become one of the most incredible stories in the travel industry that I encourage you to read more about. And it was the first question, of course, I had to ask Paul about in our discussion. But he not only leads new business ventures, he runs an incubator, he runs a venture studio called Boston Venture Studio. He founded a company called Lola, a business travel management platform I had the chance to connect with him on when he created that in 2015, which he sold in 2021. But he's also an amazing philanthropist beyond being an incredible entrepreneur. He co-founded Summits Education, which is a network of 41 schools in Haiti. He created that in partnership with the Haitian Ministry of National Education and Partners in Health, and he actually serves as the director of that nonprofit. I hope you really enjoy our conversation. Welcome, Paul. It's so great to have you here. Thanks for making yourself available for this discussion, especially given the importance of AI and where you're now focused with Deets.com. I would love to actually start, though, with a bit of background for any of those people or the few people that are listening to this that aren't familiar with your journey with Kayak. Would you mind just giving everyone a bit of that backstory, please?
I started Kayak in 2004 as the CTO. My co-founder was Steve Hafner, the CEO. And the origin story for Kayak actually came from Steve's experience at his last company. He was one of the co-founders of Orbitz. And at Orbitz, very successful company, but one of his disappointments was 70% of the people that would go to Orbitz and do a flight search would find the flight they wanted. Then they would leave Orbitz, open a new window on United Airlines, and then book directly on United. Therefore, Orbitz didn't get any commission on 70% of that traffic. So Steve basically said, what if we created a company that doesn't have any booking at all, and all we are is meta search? We'll search every other site, but when you pick the flight you want, we'll show you a bunch of places you can buy it, you click, you leave Kayak and go direct to the other site to buy it. We had this internal tagline. We never use it externally, but internally we used to say, search with us, book with them, because we wanted to be just pure search. And that was true for the first 5 or 6 years before Kayak added a booking solution. But it was a great ride. I could talk about Kayak for hours and hours. It was a great 10 years of my life. I think one of my favorite business stats for Kayak is at the time of the IPO in 2012, we had 200 employees and 300 million in revenue. And that 1.5 million per employee was not only higher than anyone had done in travel, it was higher than Google and higher than Facebook. So we built this like super efficient machine. And that got into everything from the business model, the way we hired, the way we trained people, the way we ran meetings, the way we did everything like compensation reviews. Everything we focused on was focused on scale and simplicity. And it worked quite well. It was an incredibly fun 10 years of my life.
Oh, it's an amazing journey, an incredible story, and it's a huge honor to have you on the Travel Trends podcast today to discuss not only your background with Kayak, but also the amazing project you're working on now with Deets.com. And if I can make that quick connection for context, I mean, I've had the privilege to know you for a few years. We had lunch together when you were launching Lola, which was another successful startup that was acquired. And you obviously have Boston Venture Studio that I want to talk to you about as well. But Deets.com, when I saw you at Focusrite this past year, I was super excited to see you again. Of course, I saw you for dinner at Skift, which was delightful as well. And then we got a chance to see each other at Focusrite. And the night before you were on stage, we were having a chat together at the bar where some of the best discussions definitely happen at Focusrite. And you kindly gave me a heads up about mentioning some exciting developments that were going to come out on the session. So I brought a number of team members to the session. I actually sat next to Nico, the CEO of Deets, and I was waiting with my camera out, waiting for the mic drop moment. And sure enough, you delivered in that session, and you mentioned something very cool, which was that with Deets.com, you're building the Kayak Killer. And so I just would love to touch on that, and then we can move on to other topics. But very keen for how that all came about, and you up there with Steve, because it was such a moment at the event. And so yeah, how did that all come about?
Yeah, I mean, I laugh when hearing you tell the story. It was very much designed as to be playful with my co-founder, Steve Hafner. We were sharing the stage together at Focusrite in Fort Lauderdale. And I wanted to, he and I are both, we try to be a little bit provocative and fun and, unconventional. And I wanted to do something a little provocative to get his attention, to get the attention of the audience. So I basically said, if you go to Deets today, Deets.com, you'll see a generative AI site for producing travel recommendations. And that's not new. There's probably 20 sites playing around with generative AI right now, including some of the big companies and some newcomers. But I said, really, what we're working on isn't that. We're building a lot of other stuff kind of under the hood. And people will see the full Deets probably in April, is my guess. And then they'll see Deets is really targeting to a bit of a kayak killer, in which what I mean by that is we're going to go after the same market. And when looking to buy travel, we will fix a couple of the deficiencies of meta search engines. We're going to be a booking engine, and we're going to sit right at the intersection of research and booking. There's a lot of great research sites. Some of them were like historically Condé Nast, Lonely Planet, Photos, Fromers. They're largely being replaced by sites like TikTok and Instagram and Google to some degree. Last year I went to Peru with my 28-year-old son, and I sent him a hotel that I found on Kayak. And my son said, "Dad, Kayak is for old people. If you want to travel, you should use TikTok." And so we started using TikTok together to try to find what we should do when we're in Peru. It was quite eye-opening for me. The problem with the research sites is you go to the research sites, TikTok, Instagram, whatever, you see beautiful waterfalls and people hang gliding and amazing hikes and just beautiful, beautiful hotels, but it's not really actionable. Like they don't know your dates, they don't know your budget. And then on the other hand, the other side are the booking sites, and the booking sites are really good when you know exactly when and where you want to go. They're not good for research. So Deets is trying to sit in the middle, be a really good research site with generative AI and deep, deep personalization, but also have a booking engine that is much better than a meta search site such as Kayak or Google.
Well, when you mentioned it, the people I was sitting next to instantly got it and had that reaction to say, this was really clever. I can see this coming, that all of a sudden you add commerce. Ultimately, I really want to talk to you today about how AI is going to impact the travel industry and which, whether it's the incumbents like the large OTAs that are going to benefit most, or the small scrappy startups. And that's, to me, was really great about the session with you and Steve, is because you were giving each other the gears. He was obviously saying to you, good luck with that, pal. And you were saying, just watch me. And with what I can do with generative AI and 10 engineers compared to 1,000 engineers. And I actually think that there's a really interesting narrative there for successful entrepreneurs like yourself to introduce tools in 2024 and leverage AI to be able to compete against some of these large incumbents. But I want to come to that, but I want to get there by actually just giving everyone a bit of an idea of how Deets came to be. So after Kayak, I know you've had a number of successful ventures. You've got Boston Venture Studio. And then tell me how Deets specifically came to be.
So I travel about 100,000 miles a year for each of the last 10 or 15 years, not including the first year or so of COVID where, people weren't traveling a lot. But in general, I travel about 100,000 miles a year. Like you, I have Google spreadsheets and Google documents listing all my favorite places and all the cities that I go to, particularly cities I go to a lot. So like New York, Miami, Boston, San Francisco. And a lot of times people will ask me when they're going to New York, they know I spend a lot of time there. They'll say, what's the scene? Where should I go? Where should I go out? And so the first version of Deets was an app that built these city guides. So I have a guide to New York, guide to San Francisco, guide to Miami. And the initial release was focused on where you should go out to eat. The vision was very much focused on everything you should do in New York. So definitely where you should stay, where you should go out to eat, what activities you should do during the day. And about 6 months ago, we decided to put all the energy into the website. So we actually took the app off the App Store. It's coming back soon, but we took the app off the App Store. And we built a website that really had the full vision of these AI-generated guides. It has hotels, restaurants, and activities.
And when you were building out this technology, did you start with AI? Did you start with large language models? And if so, how have you built out the technology for this platform that would be different than the way you approached it with Kayak?
Yeah, I look at AI as a great equalizer in a couple ways. One, the big guys, when they see all the startups that are operating the space, they say they'll never compete with us because we own all the data. Well, guess what? AI with large language models, if you get all the data that OpenAI has access to, you're getting like trillions of data points. So you no longer need to be a company in operation for 20 years to build a good product. You can use all the wisdom of the entire internet. So that's the first leg up that allows new startups with 5 people to compete with a company with 1,000 people. The second thing is, if you embrace AI completely in your development process, your research process, your development, your marketing, you can build products with a dramatically smaller team than you can if you're using old tech. I'll give you an example. The last thing I worked on at Kayak before I left was a product called Kayak Trips. And the way Kayak Trips works is if you buy a flight at, let's say, JetBlue, you take that purchase confirmation email from JetBlue and you forward it to trips@kayak.com. It parses it, puts it in a beautiful itinerary that you share with friends and family. It works for hotels, flights, rent-a-cars, and pretty much everything in travel. That product was built by like a 10-person team at Kayak. They've been working on it for the last 10 years. At Deets, we needed also to have a trip management feature because we want to be research, booking, trip management, and sharing collaboration. Those are kind of the 4 pieces of travel, the way I look at it. And we wanted trip management. So we built that product. I think we built a better product than Kayaks. And we did it with 2 engineers in 3 weeks. And the key advantage we have is using an LLM. LLM is really good at putting semantic tags onto messy data. And so in LLM, you can basically feed your JetBlue confirmation email or your Marriott hotel confirmation email, and it will parse it for you. So we didn't need to go and build hundreds and hundreds of parsers. We're using an LLM to parse it for us. And because we are built on all new tech and we are using AI for every aspect of activities of the company, we're going to be a low-cost provider. We can build a company with dozens of people, not hundreds of people, competing against companies with 1,000 engineers or more. And it's just a really exciting time to be a startup because of all the advantages that AI gives us.
We'll be right back. Hey, Travel Trends listeners, our new season is sponsored by Propellic. They are the go-to digital marketing agency exclusively designed for driving bookings in the travel industry. If you're looking to accelerate your direct bookings and decrease your cost per acquisition, then I highly recommend you get in touch with Propellic. Their CEO, Brendan Bliss, is a good friend of mine, and I can honestly say that these guys are what the travel industry needs. Trust me, I've referred several partners their way. Propellic is built for brands that need go-to-market support and tactical SEO and digital advertising expertise. Just visit propellic.com. That's Propellic.com. They're actually also offering our listeners a free marketing audit. All you have to do is mention the Travel Trends podcast when you reach out. Now, back to our latest episode. Tell us a bit about the team at Deets. I know you've brought in Nico as the CEO, and he comes from a really fascinating background in pets. Like, he's sold a few different companies, and so he's come and joined you now, and obviously he'll be part of our AI summit in February, and will tell us more about Deets as well then, given some of your plans. But how have you built out the team, and what is part of that philosophy that you have at Boston Venture Studio of investing and founding new startups and building out teams? Because I was most intrigued in preparing for our interview today about the philosophy that you have, which it seems to me to be kind of the DNA for how you build out a company, a successful business, and essentially what you're doing now with Deets.
Yeah. So, at Kayak, I get a lot of credit for the design. And I think ultimately we started out saying we're going to search hundreds of sites and do all this stuff. But ultimately, when we did the research as Kayak was growing and growing, the reason people came back and told their friends about us wasn't actually the meta search per se. That was a secondary thing. The primary thing that our research showed us is they said, we like the site because it's just faster and simpler than anything else. Expedia takes a minute to do a search. Kayak did one in 5 seconds. It just felt better. However, in addition to UI, which is kind of my day job, running a team of 3 designers, the real thing I did at Kayak was I was the head of recruiting, and I love recruiting. I'm always trying to network and meet new people. And when I meet someone who's really amazing, has good accomplishments, and just seems like phenomenal team skills, I do what it takes to get them to join me. So when I met Nico Chirac about 6 months ago, we've known each other for a couple of years, but we got together about 6 months ago because he had sold his last company. He has created 2 successful companies in the pet space. He created petmd.com, and they grew that from 0 to, I think, 15 million monthly active uniques. So it was a very successful company. The thing I learned about Nico when we got together for dinner about 6 months ago was not only is he a great marketer and great at social media and influencers and SEO and things like that, he's also views himself as a recruiter. So when I learned this at dinner, I'm like, dude, we got to work together, because I have this belief that magical teams build magical products, and magical products build magical P&Ls. So if Nico and I can basically get together and say our number one goal for Deets is build like this really magical team, that's going to be a blast. Nico and I just starting the fundraising process. We're going to raise a round of financing for Deets, and we're going to call with a venture capitalist today. And he asked me, like, what's your exit plan? And I said, I've sold 6 companies. I never think about an exit plan up front. If you force me to think about exit, like future, I'll just say one thing. If the exit's a year from now or 10 years from now, the most important criteria to me is I want the exit to be, we've built the best team in people's careers, like this unbelievable team that has a mojo. When people meet them, they know there's something magical happening. And with Nico as my co-founder and as our CEO, I know that he wants to sign up for that mission as well. So the Deets team today, we have 10 engineers, product manager, designer, analytics, operations, AI architect, and me and Nico. And we'll be building out a marketing team once we close this current round of funding.
That's great. I think certainly people understanding that you're a super connector and you are very focused on talent and harnessing the best talent building out a team, the idea that like a magical team builds a magical product, a magical P&L. I think there's an amazing quote right there for that is clearly a model for success. When you have Boston Venture Studio and you've got multiple projects on the go, how do you approach dividing up your time, especially with Deets now? Is it sort of in a stage where you're making that your priority focus to get that to a certain point?
We have a few things we're working on. A couple of them are just almost utilities that we might not turn into companies. So I might put it out there, maybe even just with open source, just some problems we run into that we want to solve. We'll build something for it. We're good. We're basically designers, and we think we can design good software. There's two real companies we have right now. Deets, which I would say I'm at full time right now as Nico's co-founder and CTO, and I'm incredibly committed to Deets for the long haul because I'm back in the travel industry. Like, I have a reputation in travel, and I need to do whatever it takes to make sure this is successful. Aside from that, the second company we're working on at the Venture Studio is actually a dating app. And I had a business travel company called Lola Travel, which I ended up selling to Capital One after the pandemic, when that was a lot of work. There's a lot of stories there. But after I sold Lola Travel to Capital One, I kept the name, and I'm actually reusing the name Lola. If you go to lola.com, believe it or not, to build a dating app. And I'm working with my fiance, Rachel, and the original idea for Lola came from her. And that's kind of the second we're working on. So Rachel and Gertrude Allen are full-time on Lola. And then I'm helping them with the product design. But then my day job, I'm working with Nico and the team of engineers at Deets.
Very cool. And it's great you got that domain. And it's such a, I love that you were able to keep that even after having the company acquired. You kept the domain. You could actually come up with a new brand and business model. So knowing you've obviously got the two major initiatives that you're focusing on this year, how do you see this emerging space in travel and AI in 2024? Clearly, you are carving out a new opportunity for travel AI startups and really leading the pack. Many of the individuals that we'll be speaking to, and they'll be at our summit, companies like Nicer, that's building an AI-powered travel agency, companies like iWander that are building AI-powered tours for in-destination experiences, or companies like Roam Around, who I'm sure you've met as well, Shai, who's had an incredibly successful year building an AI trip planning tool. How do you see kind of this next cohort? Because you clearly have lived through a few generations of this in travel. You lived through the whole meta search. How do you see this era of travel AI?
I'm really excited about the companies you just mentioned. There's going to be a lot more created over the next year and years. So it'll be fun to see who's launching a company in January, February, March, April. We're going to see new AI travel companies all along the way, because it's so easy to build something from scratch now using AI tools than it was building a travel company 10 years ago or longer than that. So we'll see a lot in the space. I think in the research space, there's some questions which we're not sure of yet. So, for example, do people want an open text box so they type paragraphs of text into and magically a plan comes up from that? Do they want to click some buttons to basically say, two people, romantic vibe, $3 sign budget, and type in a little bit, like, I want to go on a bike tour? How much does video play a part in travel planning? Video is great on TikTok and Instagram. Is that going to move into the full-time travel sites? They're going to use video as the interface. And then what does booking look like for these new type of travel tools? Where do they source their data from? Do they have, 5 feeds or 50 feeds? And what does booking look like? Who's the merchant of record? There's a lot to be figured out. And I think each company we're going to see created in 2024 is going to take a different approach. We're all going to learn from each other. And I think what will come out is there'll be a couple of new, very serious contenders in travel that will be created in 2024.
There definitely will be. You're absolutely right. And I think the one part that I'd love to just get into a bit more detail on is what areas of travel will be most impacted by AI and this new technology. You clearly have a strong technical background, and now even have a school named in your honor in Boston as well. And so you've got a very deep technical pedigree and an incredible amount of experience and expertise in travel as well. When people look at travel, I've seen other, for example, a colleague of mine, Jordan Jacobs, runs a successful VC fund called Radical Ventures that invests exclusively in AI businesses, but he doesn't invest in travel. He sold his AI software company and now exclusively invests and is behind some major initiatives. Like there's a company called Cohere that's based in Toronto that I'm not sure if you've come across, that is a multi-billion dollar. They're basically the enterprise equivalent of open AI. And so what's interesting though is that they won't touch travel. They won't touch travel because they don't really understand this industry. And there's obviously a lot of money to be made elsewhere, healthcare and so forth. And so I find it, and that's why I'm keen to get your take on this. There's certain people who are, and you look at the top 100 people in AI for what that's worth. There's no one on that list currently that works in travel. And it's one of the things I want to correct course on in 2024 is to really highlight people in the travel industry or people coming into the travel industry that are really harnessing AI and doing it in really compelling ways that will improve people's lives and travel experiences. And so I'd love to know, since you're an avid traveler, as you mentioned, and you obviously are focused on solving customer problems and trying to figure out the user experience. So you knowing the technology and knowing the industry, what areas do you think will be most impacted? And I guess what I'm asking is it airlines? Is it hotels? Is it booking platforms? Like, where would you kind of put most of your focus, or where do you think most of the impact is going to be first felt in travel?
For me, it's the intersection between research and booking. It'll impact everything. It'll impact flights, hotels, cars, cruises, any part of travel is going to be impacted by AI. The main thing about AI, the reason we think it's important to use it, we and dozens of other travel companies that are using AI right now, is AI finally can deliver the personalization that we've talked about for years in travel. And so now when you go to Costa Rica and I go to Costa Rica, we're going to see a different plan because maybe you're an athlete and it's going to show you surf lessons every day or diving lessons, might show me something else, sort of relaxing on the beach or a wellness resort. But that level of personalization for which hotels are perfect for you, which hotels are perfect for me, AI helps make that possible. I think travel agents, unfortunately, one of the bad reputations we had at Kayak was some people attributed the success of Kayak to loss of jobs for travel agents because we made it easier than before Kayak to people to do their own travel. I actually use a travel agent myself. I like them particularly when I go to places like Peru or Africa or like very interesting international destinations where I value their expertise. However, I think AI is the new threat for travel agents. And I think the travel agents that survive are going to be those that use AI and have travel agent platforms that allow them to have the benefits of personalization that you can get from other travel companies.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the Gilad Berenstein, who's a good friend of mine and a VC, he was highlighting on an earlier episode about how you're not going to trust any profession that doesn't leverage AI. You wouldn't trust your lawyer or your doctor or your travel agent if they didn't have a great AI assistant going forward. So, and particularly with travel, as you mentioned, there's been so many predictions of travel agents being eliminated like the dinosaurs. They were going to go extinct. And yet here we are in 2024. And some of these like Virtuoso, doing like $32 billion a year, luxury travel advisors. So there's still the combination of human and AI seems to be an intersection where there is an opportunity to still leverage people where they can be hugely beneficial, and then leverage technology for elements like you mentioned, customization. What do you think are the areas that'll be less impacted? And I ask that because sometimes the question comes up when we're talking about AI and even looking at day tours as an example. You'll have the argument sometimes becomes for and against, pro and con, and that's really, I don't think, moves the conversation forward. When someone thinks that AI is not going to impact day tours and tour guides, for example. What roles do you think are going to be less impacted, or you'll still see that there's a need for people in certain aspects of travel, since travel is a people business? And I've heard certain investors say it's not as impacted because at the end of the day, people still want to travel with people. They still want to meet other people, and it's a people business. What would you say to those people wondering about their future?
Yeah, it is a people business. It's both about opening up your world to learn about different cultures and different people with different educational background and different ideologies, different religions. But it's an industry powered by people too. That the best hotel experience, you have a phenomenal concierge who helps you. You have like great people. Whether it's an airline, a hotel, a scuba trip, there are people along the way that help you with all those things. And it can make the difference between an average vacation and a great vacation if you have good operators helping you with the trip. So that is going to always remain the same. You want good customer service. I have a funny story about that, which I'll tell in a second. I would say AI is going to increase the size of the travel industry. And the reason is AI is going to make it so simple for people to find bespoke, really personalized, great travel plans with simple booking that more people are going to say, I want to, I'm going to try this trip. There's going to be more impulse buying of travel than there has been in the past because there's been a bunch of barriers. There's all this planning and research and booking on multiple sites. But when that stuff becomes simpler and simpler and more personalized, I think a lot of people that look at pictures of beautiful waterfalls and um, hang gliding videos, they're going to just click that button and say, I want to be there. I want to be on that beach. So I look at AI and the new AI powered travel tools as something that's going to make research and purchase of travel simpler, which I think is going to grow the industry.
Yeah, well, getting closer to the source of inspiration, as you mentioned, with social media, just like the example with yourself and your son using TikTok, is that we know that that wave of innovation in our industry now, it's the dominant form of travel inspiration and essentially leading to booking. And the companies that are getting closer to that source of inspiration and providing a booking function, as you just described, that you see something you want to do and you can instantly be able to book that. This whole idea of social commerce, like companies like Hopper, are certainly trying to pioneer in that space. And they're also attracting a much younger demographic, which I find fascinating when you look at their stats, is that, it's 40 plus typically for a lot of the OTAs. 80% of Hopper's users are in their 20s or early 30s. And so they've connected with a very different audience. And so I would love to hear what businesses out there that you look at, other sources of inspiration you have, either tools that you use or companies that you're inspired by.
I mean, we have to talk about Airbnb for sure. Those guys definitely changed the industry in a big way. And a lot of people now have said they'll never stay in a hotel again. They've just had such an enjoyable experience. I think Airbnb also has done a wonderful job with user experience. I think their product is incredibly easy to use. I love their acquisition of Hotel Tonight a few years ago. I think that was a really great app, had a really great checkout experience, which made it very easy to buy a hotel. And I think that now that AI is going to make more people get these personalized plans and better booking tools going to make it more so you can do impulse buying, I think that's going to be good for Airbnb and really everyone else.
Definitely. And what about with 2024? The US, of course, is going through an election. And no matter what market we look at, election years are typically a down market for travel. From my conversations, it would appear that forward bookings going into 2024 and for the first half of 2024 appear to be strong. But later in the year, once that level of uncertainty creeps in, people do tend to change their plans or hold off. I'm keen to see what your views are on 2024 and what some of the consumer trends you're paying attention to, specifically the US market and looking at international travel.
I think you're right that election years sometimes causes people some uncertainty and cause them to be tighter on the budget. So they might not want to do things like take an extra vacation. So they might want to be a little bit conservative to try to see what's happening with the country. Is the election going to change things in a big way or not? I still feel good about 2024 for travel, and I feel great about 2025. I feel great about 2025 because all these new tools that are coming out this year are going to make people impulse travel buyers.
That's a great way to look at it. And even actually planning ahead for 2025, just you mentioning that, the number of companies that are seeing forward bookings for 2025 and putting out those dates. Dinosaur Trips, which is one of the companies we work closely with, and they've had a great year in 23 and have got 9 more trips for 24, and they're getting further interest in 2025. And you know that from cruise lines that are selling 2 or 3 years out. Bringing it back to Deets.com on your plans there, tell us a little bit about how the year is going to play out. You mentioned a major launch in April. And so obviously we'll have you at the Travel AI Summit at the end of February so we can share some more highlights then. But what are the next major rollouts for Deets.com and how is your year looking?
So the things you're working on right now are collaborative itineraries so that you and your partner can build an itinerary together and you can be have that itinerary shaped by friends or family that have been to that location that you are planning your trip to. So you're going to Costa Rica for the first time. AI can help you whip together a plan based on friends and family that have been to Costa Rica before and which ones you want to be influenced by. Can also be influenced by TikTok stars and Instagram stars that you might follow. You might like their lifestyle, and you might say, this woman stays at really fabulous places. If she's been to Costa Rica, I want to know where she has stayed so I can book the same trip. So we're working on collaboration and planning. I don't want to say too much about that yet. And then we're also working on a booking engine. So those are the two things at the highest level we'll be working on. And you'll see the next major release of Deets in April. We have a new release coming out every week. And you can build your own city guides right now. Like if you go to deets.com/Paul, you'll see my city guides. And I encourage everyone to go to deets.com and grab their username right now. But you'll see kind of full vision in Q2.
The one thing I was doing when I was creating mine was that, but there's no Toronto. I was like, there's Vancouver, but you're missing my hometown of Toronto. Is it just because you haven't got there yet? Is that the rivalry with hockey with Boston and Toronto? But yeah.
I'll get that added right away.
I was speaking to the guys, Ian Cumming, who runs Travel Massive, which has 75,000 members globally. And I know their team and their organization will be thrilled about Deets because it fits really well into their model. But his second largest chapter is here in Toronto after Sydney. Well, what about you, Paul, for 2024? Where else are you going to be traveling to? Obviously, you've got two major projects. You're clearly, you obviously work relentlessly. And so wherever you are, you're working away. I know today I'm speaking, you're in the Dominican Republic. And so what are some of your travel plans for 2024? How are you seeing this year? How much do you travel for business and pleasure? What are some of the places you're looking to get to this year to have to keep you inspired about travel?
Well, let me talk about the last year. In the last year, I've done a lot of travel in the U.S., mostly on the coasts. A lot of time in Boston, New York, Miami, San Francisco, L.A., Vegas. But outside the country in the last year or year and a half, I've been to Peru. I've been to Japan and Singapore for 2 weeks. I went to Berlin. I went to London. And then this July, my fiance and I took 14 family members to Kenya for a week safari, which was like amazing. So that's been the big travel for me for the last year or year plus. Over the coming year, I'm not sure. I definitely want to go to Ireland. That might happen really soon. I definitely want to see the Northern Lights because I haven't seen that myself yet. And I don't know if that means another trip to Iceland, which I've been to a couple of times I really enjoyed. It might be a trip to Norway, which is a country I'm very curious about. But we'll see. There's definitely a lot of travel days ahead for me in 2024.
Well, the one thing I'm going to convince you to do is not only to come to Canada for business, but also the Northern Lights. It's interesting you mentioned that because we have this project called Northern Soul, and its idea is to try and actually showcase Canada as a destination. And many people then think of the Northern Lights and instantly it's Iceland or it's Norway or even it's Alaska for that matter. Northwest Territories and Yukon have gotten together to create a campaign to showcase how amazing the Northern Lights are to the world and to come to Canada to see the Northern Lights. And I've got some good friends that run a business called Frontiers North, just north of Winnipeg in Churchill, Manitoba, where you can not only see the Northern Lights, but you can also see polar bears as well.
Amazing. Yes, send me that contact. I'll research that immediately. That sounds amazing.
Oh, we'll make that happen, and I'll try and join you. But we can go out in a tundra buggy and see the polar bears, see the Northern Lights. It'd be spectacular. And then we'll make sure it's listed on Deets as well. But I'm keen to make sure that everyone not only knows, as you mentioned, to check out Deets.com, create their profile and grab your username while it's available. But in terms of, you have the feature for experts, and like, what are some of the other ways that people can get involved in Deets, and how should they pay attention to the development over the course of the year?
Well, first of all, they should just check out the website every now and then. We release a new version at least once a week, if not twice a week. So you'll see the UI, little changes, things will move around, and there'll be new features coming in, week to week. So they should look at the website first. They certainly can follow me on LinkedIn or on Twitter to see like what I've been thinking about, what I'm writing about. And, stay tuned. We have an aggressive roadmap. We have 10 engineers, which I think is a huge engineering team when you're AI powered. And we have a lot to work on over the next year.
Well, I'm certainly excited about the experts product in particular with Deets, the idea that you can actually generate revenue. And I highlight that in particular because one of the examples that we talked about before with Roam Around, and the number of people that are creating customized itineraries, clicking on the links and booking them, and the revenue they're seeing from influencers that then have their own vanity URLs. And so the potential for Deets is massive. And obviously, you know that. I'm very bullish on it and very excited about the potential for next year. And so I'll be following closely. But it's been such an honor having you here, Paul, and obviously great getting to know you over the years. And I look forward to keeping in touch. With our AI Summit coming up in February, which will be terrific to have you and Nico there, are there any specific topics that you think we should focus on?
If you look at what travel agents do today, I'm friends with some of the executives who run American Express, GBT, Global Business Travel. And I was amazed to learn that they have 2,000 travel agents that just answer emails. So I'm really interested in new chat interfaces for travel, and have a chat that can literally cancel your flight, change your flight, extend your hotel by an extra day, get your rent a car, do whatever you need. I think that's something you should look at, as people that are using chat as really a replacement for an agent. I think that'll be quite interesting. I also think it's interesting to look at the different modalities about how people are using video in travel.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned chat and customer service, because our good friend Shane from Microsoft, who oversees travel at Microsoft, when we were discussing the conference, it was the area that he highlighted that AI is having the biggest impact on contact centers and customer service. And that's what they've seen, both with, as you mentioned, about the number of people managing email and how the Microsoft tools can auto generate emails to respond to clients, and just how much more efficient they're becoming. And so I know from my role at the Travel Corporation for many years, half the people at a 10,000 person company work in the contact centers, and they want to know how their jobs are going to be impacted in 2024, and not just listen to internal updates. And so we created one of the 4 tracks on customer service and guest experience for that exact reason. So I appreciate getting your insight on that, because that further validates the need to pay specific attention to that and have the right discussion.
Well, I think 2024 is going to be an amazing year for tech innovation. I look forward to all your listeners trying to say what they can do in travel. I look forward to the big travel players providing more and more APIs so that AI can use your services in ways that you might not imagine, because it's one thing to have an intelligent bot who can understand you're asking to change your flight, but that bot has to then talk to the airline to change the flight. So we need APIs. I think that's going to become really important. And I just think that's going to be tremendous innovation in travel in 2024, which people will start seeing the benefits as travelers immediately. But I think the real breakout year is going to be 2025.
Well, this is a perfect way to start the new year. And I can't thank you enough for making the time to be on Travel Trends Season 3, the season opener. To have a conversation with you, Paul English, is a huge honor. I have the greatest respect and admiration for you and what you've accomplished. And even to be at this stage of my career and to be able to have this conversation with you is such a massive highlight to me, because 20 years ago, when I was starting out in corporate travel management and learning about Sidestep, and then hearing about Kayak and knowing what you were working on at the time, and to be able to have this conversation with you now is an absolute thrill for me and one of the highlights of my career. So thank you so much for making the time for this discussion today.
It's great to talk with you.